Welcome to another edition. Now here's your host, Dwayne and Allie.
Hello, Dwayne Brummett here with Allie Albarigo, SchoolOwnerTalk.com. Good morning, Allie. Great to be with you, sir.
Yeah, great to be with you too, Dwayne. It so always is. And we had, for the listeners, they don't know, we get on a little early. We get to talk and hang out a bit and chat, even though that you're all the way in, Chicago or Illinois, right? Illinois. And I'm all the way in Long Island, New York. It's amazing.
Yeah. And, look, we've been doing this for, 5 years or so, something like that.
Crazy. I know everyone says that to us. They're like, you're either the most stubborn podcasters, or that you are not going to quit, or you're doing something right, and you guys have a great chemistry, and we do, and we've been having some great guests online, which is very cool, and some amazing topics, and now we have some amazing sponsors too, that people are wanting to coming to us and saying we want to sponsor you, which is exciting.
Yeah, and look, like we when I reached out to you before and said, hey, I want to do a podcast, but I just want to give back to the martial arts industry. Yeah. Would you mind being a part of it? And you're like, yeah, absolutely. And I'm very appreciative of that, because I don't think anybody would listen to me if I was just sitting here talking to myself. And we agree on a lot, but we also disagree on some things, which has been good.
Yeah, and I don't know. We disagree slightly. I think we think a lot alike. However, you're right. Like for instance, our review today of this book, the last book that I read, not Atomic Habits, but Who Not How, that you bought for me as a gift, and then that was our first book that we ever reviewed. I said, I don't know, Dwayne, I'm having a real hard time. But that was like halfway through the book, and then it kicked in for me, and I loved it, right? Then the second book, phenomenal. Like, loved that from the minute I opened it, Atomic Habits, that we reviewed. And then I had, this is my first recommendation, is Upstream. And it was actually recommended to us or recommended to me by Solomon Brenner. Yeah, and Upstream is a great book. I thought it was incredible, but you had a tough time with it, right?
It is an incredible book. I don't want to take away from Dan Heath, the author, because it is incredible. There are a lot of stories that I feel are important, but could have been a little bit more concise. Mm-hmm. I did feel like it went on and on and on and on and on. Now, the concept of upstream and downstream thinking was interesting. But I don't know. It just seems like nowadays people are coming up with words, which I get. So you want to come up with words that you own, that nobody else owns, that they become your words. Mm-hmm. When you're talking to your followers, your tribe. Yeah. So right. I get that. But the concept of upstream is just forward thinking.
Yeah.
Like, it's deeper than that, but it's like, why don't you just call it forward thinking? I don't know why that bothered me.
Yeah. And you know what? I found it to be like, from the opening of the book, where I think like within the first chapter or two, he tells a story of, and I'm going to paraphrase, and it's in my memory this way. So if it's wrong, it's how I remember it being told in the book in my own head. So it's the two brothers. They're on the beach or the sand of a lake, and they look out in the river or the lake, and they see a kid drowning, and one brother jumps in the water, runs out, swims out, gets him, and brings him back to shore. No sooner did the kid get to shore, there's another kid out there drowning, and the other brother goes out and gets him and comes back, and it happens one more time. So before the brother starts to go out, he starts running up the beach to the upstream of where the lake is. And the one brother goes, I can't handle all these kids by myself, pulling them in and bringing them back. He says, don't worry, I'm going to tackle the guy who keeps throwing the kids in the water. And for me, that resonated, because I think, especially in our industry, I've always lived and I've been doing this for 30 years, and you've been doing it for a long time too. In my head, sometimes I find myself saying, I can't believe it, less so now than ever, but I can't believe it, that parent just doesn't get it, or that student will never last, or I can't believe that this is the way they think. And it really helped me thinking ahead, like forward thought, like what is upstream? What can we correct ahead of time to fix the problems that plagues our industry? And that's the way I really dug in on that book. I thought that was a really cool concept.
It is, but it was kind of overplayed.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes, right, like this book was a long book too. It was,
yes,
1,000 some odd pages that they probably could have done the book in maybe, 700 pages, right? It was a little bit longer, but he's pretty good at statistical tracking, and this organization did this and this organization did that, and here are the stats and here's what we found. And there's a lot of that hammers on the message, but I think maybe it's done a little bit too much to the point where you're like, I want to scan through on my phone while I'm reading it and go like, do I really need to know another, 1,000 words of this same example? Like, let's get to the point already, that kind of thing. I did find that to be the case.
So let's do this. Do you want to explain what upstream means and what downstream means, just so that we kind of set the tone here?
Sure. I believe, from my interpretation of the story, upstream is what is happening now, and what could be corrected from what mistakes we should have learned. Downstream is the immediate now and the problem, right? So downstream is where we are right now without having foresight into the future about why we're dealing with a problem. I'll give you an example. In the book, I think they talked about battered women at one point. I forget what chapter it was, but they talked about how, how battered women get murdered at a higher rate because the police don't respond quick enough, or they do respond, but there's not much that they can do about it. So that's the downstream problem. Women being abused, women being murdered by their spouses. But when they took and they looked at it and analyzed, of course, the statistics, they noticed that a lot of it had to do with certain triggers. And I remember one trigger being a husband or wife, let's just say, but the husband being out of work. And then another high-end part was drinking, alcohol or drug abuse. And if he had those two combined and they were abusive to the wife, there was a high chance that they were going to murder or, injure incredibly their spouse. So they said, how can we start changing those scenarios? And they went into going to the spouse, the abuser, before it happened, and helping them with the job, helping them with their alcohol problem and their dependency and their anger issues, versus arresting them and threatening them. They went in and they solved the problem, and they found that they reduced the chances dramatically by going upstream and looking at what causes it versus the solution immediately now. Like if someone throws a punch at your face, and we're teaching them kind of a downstream mindset where, what if someone does this? What if they grab you? What if they kick you or punch you? Well, this is what we do. Now, what if we're able to say, upstream, what if you see that person's angry, if you walked away and got out of there quickly? I just saw the funniest comedian, dude, it was hysterical. He goes, self-defense classes, that's ridiculous. He says, why would you bother taking self-defense classes? You just got to learn to scream like a crazy person really loud. So the guy goes about to punch you in the face, you just cover up and start screaming, and he's screaming and he's ducking and he's screaming and he's running and he's screaming. He goes, who's going to punch a guy like that? It just, like, why do you need to learn how to defend yourself? Just learn how to scream. So that was his upstream methodology, but it was hysterical. I showed it to Nicole. We were both cracking up. So I think that that's the real issue, is sometimes we're not looking at we're looking at the problem, and we're trying to do damage control now, put the fire out. And we tend to, in the martial art business, do that over and over again. It's almost like we have holes in the bucket, for retention. Like, what are we going to do? Well, we lose 20 a month. So let's add 40 a month. That'll solve the problem. But what if you were able to reduce, and that's been a topic of our call, quite a few other interviews. What if we reduced or brought our retention rate up by 5% only? Imagine the amount of students you'd have at the end of the year. That's kind of my thought on that.
Yeah, and it's the difference between, forward thinking and then reacting.
Right.
Now, granted, some things you have to react to,
mm-hmm.
but then you need to go back and go, okay, especially if it keeps reoccurring in your business, you have to go back and go, how can I make sure that this isn't a reoccurring problem in my business anymore?
Yeah, but isn't it interesting, Dwayne? I'm sure you could admit to it. I'm scrolling on my phone right now to one of the topics, the subjects. But can you imagine, though? Well, you do know this. You've coached people and you speak to enough martial artists. Like, how many people will use the excuse like, that's not in my school, or I can't do that. I teach kung fu or ninjutsu, or that, or those students are just weak. I have a dear friend, love him to absolute death, and he's always talking about McDojos. The last meme was, don't let friends train at McDojos. And I'm like, I'm so tired of that term. It really irks me, because I'm like, it's really not, there's no such thing as a McDojo. And then people will argue with me, but what I'm just saying, you could call a McDojo a belt factory. You could call a McDojo a school that gives out a black belt in 2 years. But that's your standards. It doesn't mean that what they're doing is incorrect. That's their standards. And it might not meet your standards, but it doesn't mean that they're doing anything wrong, unless they're ripping people off, and cheating them. That's a different story. But so what do you think about that?
Well, I've been called a belt factory before, but most of that, I believe, has been jealousy from the other, martial arts business owners in this town.
Well, but maybe to them, in their concept, you are a belt factory. But that's probably because maybe they look at belts differently. Like when I went to Japan, I witnessed a test in a high school going on with a Kyokushinkai karate school. There was like 50 or 60 people, young teenagers or high schoolers, testing for martial arts. And then at the end, they got black belts. I'm like, wow, they got their black belt. And my teacher said, no, that's 4th and 5th degree. They literally, or 2nd and 3rd degree, I'm sorry. And they said that literally, he said to me, that's their standard. They don't think black belt is such a big deal. That's just a starting point for them. That's like 2.5, 3 years into their training. For us, and I fell into this trap, dude. When I would do black belts, every black belt test I did, I upped the ante. We would run 3 miles. The next test, we'd run 4 miles. The next test, I added on 1,000 jumping jacks. And then before I was done, and until I caught myself, they would have had to have been superhuman by now to be able to pass a black belt test. It was just ridiculous, the standards that I was putting on and pushing them. So I kind of cut it back, tailored it back slightly, and then I found a way to make it better. But I wasn't really looking at it that way. I wanted the standards to be my standards, and everybody else who wasn't doing it my way was selling out, so to speak. But I find the McDojo term to be pathetic.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But with regards to the forward thinking, we are a reactive species.
Yeah.
And, I don't know that this is always in everybody's nature to, think upstream rather than, responding to the downstream things that are happening. But it is so important for us in our business. I think that would be the one thing that I would say that was important about this book, is to reevaluate the things that are happening in my business, anything that's reoccurring. So one thing that I did, I'm training some new program directors.
Yeah.
But I told them, in this process, as you're seeing things and as you're learning things, if you see a reoccurring question, if you see a reoccurring problem,
right,
if you see anything that's reoccurring, that you believe that, if we just thought ahead, if we just communicated X, Y, or Z, then this wouldn't be an issue at all.
Yeah.
Let me know.
Yeah.
Because then I will put in place, steps that are going to allow that to, take care of that, so that isn't a problem in the future.
And I have to say, I learned a lot from you on this, because you're very good at really explaining things via video and audio and a combination of the two with a written, and you're always onboarding or helping your students by giving them the tools. So many times in my life, I've said things like, they'll just never get it. I'll give you a perfect example. I look out and see all the kids, how they tie belts. And I'm like, what is wrong? Like, when are they ever going to learn how to tie their belts? Like, you know, so I thought to myself, because of this book, Upstream, I could either throw my hands in the air and say never, or give up hope because it's not happening, or I could change my methodology and train them how to do it. So I created what is called a belt tie challenge. And I made a video of me doing the belt and in a few different angles and directions. And then I pushed it out to all the people via the video. And kids are literally coming in now. And like a kid the other day, he came in, his belt is in his hand. I'm like, buddy, you want me to tie it? No, his mom says. He wants to show you that he could tie it on his own. And boom, 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 he's like beaming with pride. Now you'd think like tying on a belt is not such a big deal, but especially when we're tying it on our kids and saying, get off into class. But now you give this kid responsibility and they're tying their belt properly. They're proud. That's one step in developing self-confidence and self-esteem. So, you know, that's the Upstream problem was solved by me creating a training competition. And then, by the way, it lasted really hot for like 2 weeks, and now it's back to kids not practicing or learning. So I have to revitalize that within my school. But asking the right questions is important.
Yeah, can I make a suggestion with that?
Yeah,
because we have our like our 5 onboarding videos for our students. One of them is belt tying, and we have a stripe. It's a purple stripe, but we have a stripe that's attributed to knowing how to tie your belt.
Okay.
And so what we do is in one of those 5 videos, I talk to them about learning how to tie their belt. And then I challenge them to, you know, learn how to tie it and then come into their very next class and demonstrate it so that they can earn their very first stripe on their belt.
Love it.
So that has really helped to solve that problem in I would say 80% of the problem cases.
Yeah. Maybe I could reach out to Jason, who we did a call with, right? We did a call with Jason just recently, or was it on the other? It was us, right? And maybe he has a special, because he does belt stripes, customized belt stripes. Maybe he has one for that. But you're right, though. Like, so what do I do? I could be my old self from 15 years ago and go, people are stupid. They're never going to get it. They don't care. The parents are too busy. They don't. Or I could say, how do I? Because the parents, I realize the parents care. They're just so overwhelmed.
Yes.
You know, you know, I'm sorry, I forgot my belt. It's never like I was lazy sitting by the pool and I forgot my belt or I forgot my uniform. It's more like, well, he was with his dad for the weekend, or I rushed home from work and we thought we had it. So there's so many different things. So I need to work on that communication. So what I also did was put together a questionnaire that asked people, like I said, I'm putting together this questionnaire, most commonly asked questions from parents or students that they would like to have answered. I said, this stemmed from a conversation with a mom that I had, and procedures they were receiving their uniform. When did they get their belts? And she had no idea. So I put together this questionnaire with just 4 basic questions. What is the first question you had ever? And it could have been a brown belt. They were helping me by saying, this is what I thought when I first joined. And the one mom wrote, how will we know when Rooney is eligible for her belt if someone is tracking it or noticing her progress, right? The second question was, what's the second question you have? And she wrote, what is the promotion earned belt based on? Attendance, ability, all legitimate questions that I thought I had communicated, and it's in our app. But for some reason, she didn't look at it or see it. The next question was, what's your third question? Do some children do okay in class but are not naturals? Just wondering if most kids can excel, because her kid is not a natural. And I was never a natural. Like, so, and then the last question, tell us your thoughts on what we could do better. And it says, what's the maximum number of kids allowed to train in a class? And that was based off of Zoom. So I went into that as well. So, you know, like, asking people what those questions are helped me, because now I made like 4 training videos, how to wear the uniform, what to wear, you know, another video on how people get promoted and what are the criteria. And the third one was on the belt tying. So I'm trying to upstream it so that this is automated and people just get it when they first join, and those questions will be eliminated.
Yeah. And we have the onboarding for the student, you know, those 5 videos. But I also have an onboarding for the parents as well. So they get a series of 5 videos, or excuse me, they actually get 6 videos.
Right.
the first video is on YouTube, and that basically just shows them how to download our app, make sure it's hooked up correctly, right?
Right.
But then after that, I have a parent section inside of the app.
Mm-hmm.
So the other 5 videos get dripped in the app because I want them to know how to use the app.
Yeah.
So I'm forcing them to watch those welcome videos, if you will.
Yeah.
Via the app.
Mm-hmm. I love it. It's called Snagit, right? Or Snap It. That program that we got on our phone you told me about. Which one that you use to make the audio?
The screen capture.
Yeah. I forget. Let me see the name. I forget the name of it, but that was a great Capture. It's called. Yeah, it's called Capture, the app. That was great. When you shared that with me, I could hold up my phone. It took me a few times to practice. I talk into the phone and I'm able to scroll through, go, you see, this is what the app looks like. Look, this is where you push on the app. This is where you download the app. And then I found that we were having a lot of problems with our app because parents were going in and signing up with an email. Maybe the mom signed up, but the dad bought the app and now the emails weren't working. So they weren't getting the class schedule or it wasn't identifying with the student.
Right.
So I put that in my tutorial. If you don't see this blue button for classes, that means that you use an incorrect email. And if you don't have this and that, and it literally, when I send out, I have people that are brand new before they've even stepped into my school. They've already had the app downloaded and they're already watching things on classes. So it's the coolest thing ever. But again, it's that upstream mentality. How do we correct the problem that's been plaguing our school and bothering us for the longest time or going against us? That's the part that I really dug into with this book.
Yeah, and so there's another idea here. Mr. Bean actually thought about this, my head instructor, but we came up with what were called practice cards. Mm-hmm. And basically we took Spark, and we created surveys. And in those surveys, we have different practice cards in there. So like one of the practice cards might be, do your hand technique 3 times and then check yes. Do your foot technique 3 times, check yes. Do your form once, check yes. Da 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 da. And that actually gets emailed to them at certain periods, right, to help the home practice. And
that's
we're
awesome.
We're actually getting people filling out those surveys and turning them back in. Now for us, so we're getting, I would say probably, and we're only doing this with our advanced students because I was like, let's just do a trial run with our advanced students first. But we've got about, 25 to 30% of our advanced students now doing the practice cards.
Right.
And so then we're talking, how do we track this in such a way that it is not overwhelming for us,
right,
but reward the students that are actually doing the practice cards in front of all the other students that aren't doing the practice cards.
Yeah, highlighting them.
Yeah, so we're trying to come up with we don't know if we're going to do stripes or patches or whatever, but and then our other thought was, what if we were to do that and part of that, and you talk about eligibility to be able to test, 1 is attendance, 2 is the knowledge of the techniques, 3 is attitude, physical ability. But maybe another one would be you've had to have completed, 10 practice cards over the 3 months.
Right. Yeah, you see, I love that. And for me, I that goes back to that book, Atomic Habits, that we did. I read that book from a martial artist point of view and a teacher. Like I read that book and I kept saying, if my kids have a sloppy horse stance or a sloppy 1-2 punch or whatever it is, soft blocks, but they never trained in the martial arts before, that's my fault because they're just not, they might naturally be lazy and soft, but we have to instill in them the desire through a habit of continually reinforcing the training. I'll give you another example where my students, when they walk through the door, they bow. And then they go and they take off their shoes and then they go on the floor. They bow in 4 spots and they wait to be bowed onto the floor. So sometimes they walk through the door and they run. And I'm like, I now had, I could always remind them and say, no, go back. But now I have a black belt waiting there doing the temperature check and saying, bow at the mat, always bow. So now it's starting to become habitual because I have someone there continuously reminding them over and over and over again. What does that do? It creates a habit. Yeah. And once the habit is ingrained in their head, they're then hopefully going to do it unless we let them slack and then stop reinforcing this. Again, another problem on our end as far as martial artists go, where we push an agenda and then forget about it. It's like training a program manager. You train them and you get them up and running. If you just let them to do their own thing, they're going to miss a step. I used to have my people do, yeah, I don't do that last 4 steps. It doesn't work for me. And I'm like, no, you have to. So I had to be on it and continuously training them and staying on top of them, or else they just start doing their own thing, eventually making it their own adaptation and eliminating things.
Well, you have to inspect what you expect. You just have to. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
yeah.
So I've got, I don't know, my camera there, but you get the life you tolerate. You probably can't see it, but
right. No, I can't see it in the picture.
Yeah, it's, I don't know.
Is that a book? Oh, that's one of your statements. It's like a plaque on the wall.
It is, yeah. You know, so the little bitty things you can send pictures and get framed.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it says. It says, you know, you get the life you tolerate. And I took that from the Who Not How book.
Yep. Hey, listen, this is the funny thing. Like parents are afraid to parent these days. Not all of them, but some of them are afraid to parent, like meaning don't talk to me like that, or don't ever say that to me, or don't ever do this, because they're afraid that the kids are not going to love them as much.
Well, they want to be their buddy.
Yeah. So like with my daughter, we've never, ever had an issue where she walked to her bedroom and slammed the door and said, I hate you. Like, you know, we've always had an agreement since she was an infant, like 3 years old, that we always talked and said, listen, we'll never say something mean, like I don't love you or anything like that, because you never know what tomorrow may bring. And you don't want that to be the last thing you ever said. So I said, we're always going to voice our opinion if we're upset with something, but you have to understand our rule in the house is to do it in a respectful way. Now, my daughter's not perfect. She gives me attitude, rolls her eyes. She's 21 years old. Sometimes she gets frustrated, but overall we have a really good understanding. I don't even want to say relationship, but an understanding of how we communicate in our school and in our house. We don't fight. We don't yell. We don't throw things and smash things and slam doors. We just don't do it. Our house is a very calm, you know, voices get raised and sarcastic comments get made, you know, just like normal people. But overall, that's what I've established. So like the same thing for your dojo. You know, I have to do that in my school. I have to remind people they can't just talk. While I'm talking, they can't just interject and talk. I'm like, you haven't been asked a question. When you want to ask a question or answer, you raise your hand if I say any questions. If not, you just stay quiet, you train, and I say train and go, and you do. You don't have to interject. We're not having a conversation. We don't need to have a conversation. So that's the way I brought people up in my school, and that's how I continually to create those habits and methods.
Yep. Yeah. So
yeah, how about wasn't it interesting though, like you know, how the chapter 6 was called How Will You Change the System? And I don't remember the story, but let me tap into, there's many stories that I thought were really cool. But he talked about you know, like different companies and how systems were set out and how you go about changing something, because change is tough for everybody, right? So you know, I don't know if you remember that particular chapter or what it was about, but, you know, it was, I forget, a guy is in college. It said that he was being toured around his college and then he had a guy showing him the ropes and, you know, it was all about the system of how they indoctrinated him into the school. And I thought that was interesting because, you know, what are we doing in our schools that we could change the way we what do we call it, onboard our students, right? Whether it be onboard digitally or onboard. And by the way, I just did a coaching call this morning where in the coaching call, I gave an assignment to the client and I said, we need to have 2 different cheat sheets for like the program manager or the head instructor. So an index card to remind us of all the things that we always forget. Like, you ever say, oh, I wanted to offer them, they called up for a trial. I should have said, hey, do you want to bring a friend? but we forget. And I know I do. And then I'm like, oh, I could have had an opportunity. If we make that a habit, and every call calls and we say, okay, let's set you up for Thursday. Do you want to bring a friend with you? Oh yeah, I'd love, or a sibling or a cousin or whatever. So I said, make a trial class cheat sheet. And ask if they want to bring a friend, and make sure that you ask if they know where you're located, and ask if you know, all the questions that may arise, but have it on a little cheat sheet. So the minute you're on the phone or the minute you're texting, you could look at that so you never forget. And it's a simple little thing, but it's a reminder so that you're not downstream going, I should have remembered. I wish I did. I could have, you know, and you regret it.
Well, yeah. And so we originally had our phone script.
Mm-hmm.
I have since digitized it with regards to, now it's a survey. And so that, you know how you can save bookmarks on your
Right. Yep.
on your browser. So at the studio, there's a bookmark browser. You click on it, and then it pulls it up, and they just read it. And I even have it color coded. So, like for instance, if it is for a kid, then I think it's like green, and then they skip all these other questions and they go down to the green section and they start asking that, or whatever the color is. Right?
Gotcha. Yeah. So if it's an adult, you go to the adult section, and then you have your series of questions and so on.
Yeah. And so then they because I just created this training for my program directors, because of course over the past year I've been doing it myself.
Right.
You know,
right.
And so, but anyways, we you know, we go all the way through that. Then you hit the submit button like you do for any survey, right? And then it pulls up my Dropbox link in there, and it's the rest of the phone script that, you know, we go through. And so, you know, part of it is it goes, you know, hey, Mrs. Jones, we you know, now we do find that you know, students that try with a friend or a family member actually enjoy the program even more. Would there be a friend or a family member Johnny would like to bring into class with him?
Right.
And so we have the script. So it's
Yeah.
not even a little note card. I mean, they have to follow.
That's great though.
You
Yeah.
know?
No, I love that, Dwayne. And that's great, especially if you're doing it and you built that into your systems and you trained your program managers to do it every time. I find that even myself, I forget. And I know I developed the system, and I tell my people and my clients, and I forget, you know, so having that script is very important. And it could be a script that you could loosely follow some of the verbiage, but it reminds you of every step that you're going to take so that you don't forget it. Right. And
well,
that's
and see, that's the upstream thinking when I wasn't asking them. Like I would ask them, do you know where we're located? And they would say yes.
Right.
But then I didn't follow that up.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many people I sent to other studios.
Yeah, exactly. That's why that was one of my questions there.
Yeah. So I say, do you know where we're located? And they say yes. I say, great. Then you know we're located behind Midland States Bank off of North Street in Bradley? Question mark.
Yeah.
And then I still have people go, oh, I thought you were the studio on X Road. You know?
Right.
Oh,
Right.
no. And then I tell them, no, we're located behind, you know, are you familiar with the Bradley area? Da, 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 da. And then I even go a step further, and I tell them that, you know, look, after we hang up, I'll process everything, and then I'll send you a text with our address on it, because I have a saved reply text in Spark, because you know how you can save.
Yeah, of course. Great feature.
So that's one of the ones that's just saved. And then I just click on it, boom, send it out. And then, of course, in our email when we make the appointment, and then our text message the day before and the day of both have our address in it as well.
That's great.
But that's just that upstream, you know, thought process that needs to happen.
Yeah, because look, you have a scheduled trial, and if they don't have the address because we forgot or we didn't mention it, now they're off to Joe's Taekwondo down the road, or whatever the case may be, or, you know, karate, or, you know, and then we miss out on all that hard work that they know they're going to run into situations. Keep one in your car. Like I always had my daughter, I had 50% custody of my daughter, and when her mom and I got divorced, great relationship, best of friends, but we always had different parents solve those issues before they happen. So we're upstream, right?
Yeah, that's going out to them, but I send it an hour after they have been at class.
Mm-hmm.
If they take that survey, at the end of that survey, I send them to the link where they can refer someone. Nice. And I just say, you know, hey, thanks for coming, blah, 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 blah. Use the link below, you know, to invite someone to come to your next class with you.
That's awesome.
Set up on an automation that it all happens.
That's great. And again, that automation process keeps the possibility of forgetting out because it's a computer. It doesn't get lazy. It doesn't get stupid. It doesn't get forgetful. It's a trick.
Other aspects, it's important to do ready, aim, and then fire.
Right. Yeah, I think that even so, maybe switch that even more and it'd be like aim, ready, and then fire, right? You mix it the two only because sometimes we have to line our sights up and then get ready and then pull the trigger. So I think that sometimes as an owner, you have the experience, and this is where experience sometimes get wasted on the young or the new or the people who are brand new to the job. And especially with school owners, like I see this all the time. I have another client that's always constantly, he's only been open for a few months, not even 2 months after he shut down for COVID. And he's always revitalizing everything. I'm like, dude, you haven't even given it enough time to get traction and you've changed it already. I said, you can't statistically even analyze what you're doing to see if it's right or wrong because it's such a short period of time that you've been doing it. So I'm not saying do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. I'm saying, but you do need some time to kind of calculate the data so that you could come up with some solution. And by the way, in the book, that gets beaten to death a lot is data analyzation. He talks about it over and over and over again as far as what's going on, but rightfully so though.
I was going to say, in his defense, it is vitally important for that data. My inadequacy is that that's too much info for me. Like I don't want all that info.
Yeah.
I am not a give me the 100 data things. Although it's vitally important, I just want it to be. I want the abridged version.
Yeah, I'm the 2-minute snapshot type guy too. Like when an employee used to come in and give me this long-winded thing, after like a minute and a half, I've already tuned them out and I'm waiting for the end so that I could tell them what I've already calculated what I wanted to do. But I had to respectfully wait. So I'm like, listen, I taught all my people when they come to work for me that I like 2-minute snapshots. I don't want a long-winded kind of explanation because that's just not how my mind works. Like I can't, I'm like, all right, already. I've heard it all. Like, don't give it to me again. Like it's torture to me. So I find that interesting. You're the same way. And I think that's a high D, like when they go on the disc chart, decisive, you know, all those different letters that bring out personality traits. You're a high D, which is decisive, action orientated, and you don't wait and, you know what you want. You formulate that plan pretty quickly.
Fairly quick. But I had to develop that though, because I was actually a high C.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I was more of the aim, you know, before I would fire.
Question, should I pull the trigger? Should I aim some more? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so I still deal with that because I want to make the right decision the first time.
Right.
You know, because I don't want to redo it. It's not that I'm scared to do something all the time.
Right.
It's just I like to do it right the first time and not revisit that thing again if I don't have to.
Yeah, I agree. And that kind of leads into the next chapter that I really enjoyed, which was chapter 11, which was who will pay for what doesn't happen. And I found that's interesting. Like, for example, I believe it talks about a lot of the medical industry. So I have personal experience when I had my store, A Touch of Zen, used to sell teas, like drinking tea. And I had this company that had preventative teas for you not to get sick. And then I had teas for when you got the flu, when you got the cold, when you were tired, and my repair teas, the preventative teas never sold, but the teas to fix the problem were always off the shelves. And that led me to believe, like, why don't you just buy the teas to help your immune system beforehand? You'll never have to get sick. But they were in the not preventative. They were in the product downstream, and they were working on the solution as it hit them. So I love it. It also talked about how people would get sick, and our medical system, which I can't stand a lot of it, is all about healing the disease or subduing or minimizing or by taking, for example, I'm a diabetic and my doctor says, I want to put you on statin because, and I'm like, what's statin? He's like, oh, it lowers your blood pressure and makes sure, he said, and I'm like, why? Does my blood test show that I need statin? He's like, no, but typically people who are diabetic die of heart disease. So let's just nip it in the bud. I go, so your mentality is to give me a medicine that I might not even need, just because statistically a lot of people with diabetes have heart attacks. And he's like, yeah. And then I said, I'm not interested. And he goes, well, it's not my fault then if you go to the emergency room with heart pain. I go, of course, it's never going to be your fault, even if you put me on statin either. I said, but why would you just give me a medicine just because that's the trend for diabetics? I said, maybe send me out to do tests and see if my heart is in good shape, if my arteries are clear, if right. I'm in, like, why would you just pop me into a medicine? And it blows me away that this is how our world works. Like, we're always solving the solution. I think he even talked about insurance, like life insurance, just in case we die, we have insurance. But then when we live and the insurance get canceled, we wasted all that time. So it's like, what do we do kind of situation? Listen to the experts kind of thing.
Well, yeah. And that's why I, with regards to the health coaching that I do, that turned me on even more, because this is preventative.
Right.
I've got people that have gotten off of blood pressure and cholesterol medicine.
Amazing.
And yeah. And their quality of life now has just skyrocketed. And I also, not only are they losing weight, because it's not just about getting their body healthy, but it's also about getting their mind healthy. So now they're educated, and the different healthy habits that are going to sustain them for the rest of their life, as opposed to just taking, just dieting, because this is not a diet. I mean, that's not it at all.
Right. Well, that's amazing. Like I said to Mike Storm the other day, I posted, he had a picture of some young woman that had lost like 100-something pounds. And I said, your slogan should be making the world hot again. And, like one hot chick at a time, and he said, yeah, that would probably be fun. I'm like, yeah, I'd probably get in a lot of trouble just for saying that. But I think that's really
Did you see my post where I put, how you can do those little backgrounds and you got the little smiley face that's laughing, but it's laughing so hard it's crying.
Yep.
So I set one of those up, and then I put the word me and then colon, as if I was talking.
Right.
And I'm asking the question, what are your health goals? Mm-hmm. And then I put new client in the colon, and then it says to only have one chin.
That's true, right?
Yeah. Or I think I said your weight loss goals, and then they said, to only have one chin, and then I put funny, not funny,
Yeah. And, it's true, though. And then you look at that, and that's what this chapter was about, by the way. It's like we could go to the hospital and pay a fortune, and even, the government pays a fortune on correcting problems. And they had, I forget what state it was that did this test. I think it might have even been Michigan. And they said, what if we put money into, and they said, if we had a board of health people that could teach people how to be in better shape, eat correctly, and not get obese and diabetics and all these other diseases that come from not taking care of yourself and eating improperly, how much money would we save? But also, too, the sad reality is the business machine is set up to take care of sick people. It would really cut that business machine in half if they did the right thing and trained people ahead of time. It's like there used to be a great show, Jamie Oliver, the chef, and he would go around each week and he would go to a county or a town, and he would do this study where he'd change everyone's diets. Like he'd go into the school system and give them healthy lunches for a month. And he'd teach a family that all they had was pizzas and junk food and candies and all these cakes in their refrigerator, and give them real food and teach them how to cook and how easy it was. And he would literally change this town into a more healthier community based on, I love the show. It didn't last for more than a season because I guess people didn't want to hear about how they could fix their lives. But what about that? Like, let's just take our school, for example. What could we do in our schools to pay a little bit now, but save in the long run? And imagine if we had a retention specialist that we hired. Let's say we lost 50 students a year based on retention, but we're able to save, let's say the students pay $100 a month. That's like 60 grand. But let's say we hired someone for 25 grand and we're able to save 30 of those students, right? You'd still be making a massive profit by paying that person a decent salary because all their focus is on is retention.
Well, and then compound that though too, because that's saving that the first year,
right?
You know, and then the next year. So you only need to save all those people in the first year because
right.
Then those people that have been saved are actually paying for that retention specialist the next year. And that retention specialist is saving another 30 that following year. And so it just compounds.
Yeah. But why is it, do you think, that school owners won't do that? And I look at my retention. I always say, and we talked about this maybe the last call, that retention is marketing, or a few calls ago. Like, if you're spending money on new marketing, but you're losing, those 5 out of every 10 that sign up over the course of a year, why not work on your retention? Focus heavily on communication with your clientele, on keeping people happier and talking to them and making sure that they're hitting their goals and developing relationships. Spend your focus there, because that's where you have to, then you don't have to market as much either. And also, if you are marketing, you're going to bring more people in and keep them, and they're going to be happier and refer more. And it's like you said, I'm not in.
You are now. Yeah, it was glitchy, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. But yeah,
but I'm saying, imagine how that would work if you're focused entirely on retention. I mean, it would literally change the financial landscape in your school, because that's the problem. It's a big industry buzzword: in through the front door, out through the back door, holes in the bucket, revolving door policies. Like, why aren't we really working on system retention? That would be probably the first lesson to train martial arts schools in, so that they could grow their schools.
So then that would be an upstream thought.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay.
Without a doubt. So anyway, I think you, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst, where do you put this book in your view?
Well, the concept is a 5.
Great.
The delivery for me was a 3.
Okay. And I think that, I agree. I have to agree that sometimes it was dragged out a little bit. I think that honestly, the book could have been a few hundred pages shorter, or whatever. I know I read it on my iPad, so on my phone. But anyway, I liked it. It really inspired me to look at my systems and review them. And I've already done a lot. So the book is very valuable to me. It cost me $20, and I probably will end up making thousands on it, because I'm teaching people, changing my systems, thinking differently. So what a worthwhile read. In fact, I did write to the publishers, the author. I wrote to his management company to see if we could get him on the show. So that would be cool if he ever did. But yeah, I liked it, and now we're going to go on. This is our 3rd book of the year, right? We did Who Not How, Atomic Habits, and now Upstream. So you're going to choose the next book. Let me know. Make it something interesting though, so I don't have to fall asleep and read it. Just make it. But yeah, these books are super powerful. I think that everybody watching should be reading. Even if they hate reading, listen to it on audio. But you need to get in the hat. All entrepreneurs that are successful are either improving their lives on a day-to-day basis, if not minimum on a week. And that's through education, whether it be seminars or audio series or books or videos. So you should be, as a school owner, in that mindset.
Well, and I'll just say mentally, when you sit down and even just take 5-10 minutes to just read and not have, like, so when I sit down and I do these, I actually take my watch off, because there was just a notification that came in through right now. Yeah. I take my watch off. I turn my computer speaker off. I sit in that chair that's back there, and then I just focus on it for whatever duration I've scheduled for.
Yeah.
There's a mental escape that happens. Definitely. Just even, I'm not even talking about the information that I'm getting to learn. There's a mental escape from that. So I would encourage everybody just to get a mental escape and introduce some new information, because that's the only way that you're going to grow, is by introducing new and good and new information.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're just about out of time, and we're going to roll our outro, which is going to be our sponsors that we have. And please, if you're a listener and you have any interest in promoting a product or a business that you have, get in touch with me or Dwayne, and let's chat so that we can help you grow your business. And also special thanks to the people that are supporting us, and that are on this outro. We talk about our podcast sponsors and experts, because they are experts, and we're going to have some of them on again. We may even, if we have a topic, we may pull a few people in and say, hey, join us at 12:15. We want to get your take on whatever we're talking about, just like they do on certain news channels.
Yeah, and now next week we have a guest coming on, right?
Yeah, let me see who it is. Next week is I'm not sure. I have to look. Do you remember? Did I book him already?
Is it? Yeah. Well, I thought you said Chung Park.
Oh yeah. Yes, that's true. I haven't verified yet exactly, but I think he said yes. Maybe I have verified and I didn't write it in my calendar. But Chung is the owner of Spark, and such a highly motivated, talented martial artist, traditional guy. And we've had him on in the past, right? A while ago. I think we have. Yeah, we go back. Okay. He was in his car. I remember in his car was cutting out.
Yeah.
So we'll have him again, and it'll be inspirational, because not only is he one of the owners of Spark, and then the other partner is Ron Sell, that I'd like to also get on the show. Also, just talking about how they put this program together. And Chung is highly successful. He's got like multiple schools, making tons of money. Billing volume is through the roof. So he'd be great to talk to.
All right. Excellent. Thanks, Allie. And just want to remind you, go to schoolownertalk.com to get more information on all the podcasts. And I appreciate everybody.
All right, cool.
Another episode of Martial Arts School Owner Talk Podcast. This would not be possible if it weren't for the support of our amazing sponsors. Please check out EliteInsights.com for all your website needs. LeadHunterMedia.com, your online digital marketer and content provider. Academy Kings BJJ Growth Consulting and Management at GrowMyAcademy.com. SparkMembership.com, the best darn software for school owner manager on the planet. GetKarateStudents.com, a martial arts growth consulting company for all your school systems. We will see you next time.